in the sting of a cold February morning, when the dark of night meets the light of day, I am standing here at the Oddfellow Cemetery outside of Knoxville. The Oddfellow Cemetery, at one time, it used to be a very popular sort of cemetery franchise, like Forest Lawn, Forest Hills, other cemetery franchises like that. Oddfellow at one time had quite a number of cemeteries, many of them throughout the South, from what I could tell by my research. This Oddfellow Cemetery, as the plaque notes, was established in 1880 by the Benner Lodge chapter of the Oddfellows Fraternal Order. The cemetery was enlarged by the Daughters of Zion in 1881, the Good Samaritans in 1884, and the Silver Moon chapter of the Oddfellows in 1885. It is the final resting place for many of Knoxville's early noted black preachers, political figures, educators, business pioneers, and other outstanding community leaders. Oddfellow Cemetery is right down the road from the Confederate Cemetery that was established by the Mabrys after the Civil War, and in opposition to the Veterans Cemetery downtown Knoxville, that was primarily during that time and late into the 19th and 20th century very pro-union. The Oddfellow Cemetery over time has been sort of divided into pieces. There are many sections that constitute what originally was the Oddfellow Cemetery of the 1880s. Much like the Confederate Cemetery next door, the Oddfellow Cemetery here has been a victim of a great deal of vandalism, graffiti, and the such over the years. The archaeology department at the University of Tennessee, in the past 5 years or so, has been through the grounds here with radar and volunteers, hoping to find what remains of the burial sites here in Oddfellow. They've sort of cleaned up the cemetery what they can, and restored some of the stones here that they could restore. Thousands of Knoxville's Black residents have been buried here in Oddfellow over the years. Perhaps most important among them, most noted among them, at least to me, is a man by the name of Cal Walker. Is that his name? Cal Walker. And he was buried here in 1925, I believe, somewhere here. Sadly, Cal Johnson. There you go. Getting lost in time with the names. Cal Johnson, perhaps, is the most famous figure buried somewhere here at Oddfellow Cemetery. Doing my research into Cal Johnson, they could not find his grave or his tombstone. When the UT tried to restore Oddfellows to some sort of condition. Cal Johnson, you ask, who was he? He was a millionaire in Tennessee and in Knoxville, who was born a slave. Born into slavery, he became the richest man in all of Tennessee before he died. He built a park in downtown Knoxville. In appreciation to the neighbors that helped make him so wealthy. A beautiful park with a beautiful fountain that Nikki Giovanni mentions in her essay, 400 Mulvaney Street. Today, Cal Johnson is remembered with the recreation center that was named in his honor near the former site of Nikki Giovanni's grandparents' house in downtown Knoxville. Oddfellow Cemetery is next to a new housing development, affordable housing along Martin Luther King Avenue, I believe it is. I first discovered Oddfellow Cemetery by chance when I first came into Knoxville 3 or 4 years ago. Sort of stumbled upon it. And I was charmed by this park that was also a cemetery. Having been around the country, I learned about public cemeteries and garden cemeteries. It was a fashion that began overseas, I believe in the 19th century, the middle half of the 19th century, and then came over here to the States. And many of the new cemeteries in the country took after this fashion of making public cemeteries very much like gardens or parks. Where you could come with a picnic basket and relax on the lawns, among the trees, the rolling grass, and get away from the very congested tenements, noise, and congestion of a scruffy city like Knoxville. What the city, the community has done here on this side of Oddfellow Cemetery is to make it a park. Quite literally, a park. Mingled with the remains of what's been left of Oddfellow Cemetery on this particular piece of ground. In this neighborhood, black predominant neighborhood here, atop Summit Avenue, where a hill becomes MLK, as road names are split and divided. Much like Oddfellow. Or the Confederate cemetery next door. The city has put in a little theater. To celebrate the next star to come from Knoxville and or Tennessee. And has also here, aside from providing for the young, the city of Knoxville has also accounted here by honoring many of the black doctors that are buried here in Oddfellow. Their graves may not be known, but certainly their names and contributions to the black community of Knoxville is honored here. Doctors Row, MLK, and this portion of Oddfellow Cemetery was renamed to honor the professionals of Black Knoxville. Dr. Walter Hardy Memorial Park. Quite something. Later today, services will be held for the late civil rights activist here in Knoxville, Robert Booker. The services will be held here at the Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church along Martin Luther King above Knoxville. Interesting note here that this church, which began in 1910, 1920 or so, did not really become a brick and mortar steeple building until 1954. Ironically, about the time that the civil rights movement in the United States began. It is here Robert Booker will be remembered as a civil rights activist who helped desegregate the Tennessee Theater downtown, who was Knoxville's first black state representative, who was an executive for the Beck Cultural Center here for many years, a newspaper columnist for many years. He will be buried at Veterans Memorial Cemetery in East Tennessee.